Access to Information and Protection of Privacy Act, Aippa of 2002. It was placed to regulate provision of information and the right to access information in Zimbabwe through media outlets and journalists. And this is the broadcast. And I'm your host, Wilbert Muzaruwetu. Aippa, it seeks to limit the access to information for only Zimbabwean citizens, and particularly the state information. It will also give punitive measures to people that falsified information. It also had the provisions that it wanted to protect the state information or the state data for protection purposes. It sought to license and to register all the media outlets in Zimbabwe and also journalists in Zimbabwe. What were the major aims of Aippa? Number one, it was taken from Canada's information legislation. It was basically an inspiration. Number two, it seeks to publicly protect the public through the provision of authentic information and also that would know where it came from. It also seeks to criminalize falsification of information and also to protect privacy in Zimbabwe. But mainly, it also seeks to defend the public through protection of essential data that would get in wrong hands. However, in reality, Aippa might have affected a lot of the following people in accessing information in Zimbabwe: the photographers, the journalism, the civil society organization groups, and also the generic citizens in Zimbabwe. An example to show you how it affected media outlets and journalists in Zimbabwe: in 2003, Daily News reported in an article that affected or that had negative impact towards the government. Unfortunately, these two journalists were not registered with the MIC. Of the two journalists that were arrested in 2003 for failing to be registered with MIC were Wilbert and Stanley Hammer. So, what were some of the major implications of Aippa in Zimbabwe? Number one, it violated the constitutional amendment of 2013, which stated freedom of expression and freedom to access information. Number two, it did not empower citizens to get the information that they did, therefore, it reduced their participation in the general sense. Number three, it remained with the monopoly of the government controlling the information, therefore using it for its own legitimacy. However, something to know that is very important about Aippa is that it never promoted anything to do with accountability and freedom in Zimbabwean society. Now, for many of you that are in media and journalism, you should be happy to know that Aippa was successfully repealed. Now, these are some of the advantages that it brings to the society of Zimbabwe. Number one, it is a shift from what was known as Mugabeism and authoritarian tendencies to what is now a reformed Zimbabwe, which opens and reforms the institution and the political space. Number two, it fully grants the people the 2013 amended Constitution of freedom of expression and freedom to access information in Zimbabwe. Number three, it ensures openness and transparency to make sure that the government is accountable so long as information is related and transferred to every individual in Zimbabwe. Number four, access to information allows citizens to fully cooperate and participate in Zimbabwe, knowing that they are informed, they make informed decisions and rational choices with the well-educated information. The suspension of all monetary transactions by the RBZ on all mobile platforms, including Ecocash, One Money, Telecash, and MyCash. Now pay attention very closely. There's been a lot of misinformation about this. Number one, agent lines are the ones that have been suspended, but the merchant lines can have payments being received, that is for water and for bills payments, but with the limitation of not exceeding 5,000 RTGS. Now the mobile transaction for non-agent lines is still taking place. The only capping is that you can only transact up to 5,000 Zim dollar a day, either to receive or to send. Now, this limits just a huge transaction for these non-agent lines. Now, the most asked question is, why did this happen? Now, the question is answered. The reason is because in the sector, money changes were spiraling and inflationally pulling the rates every day for their own gain to clean sweep and to get the US dollar in the market. Now, the other reason why this was introduced was because of the cash out illegal interest rates which were being done by the agent line holders, in which they were charging you up to 60% for you to get your own money without any reason. What is the most important thing to note about this new regulation? Number one, it made sure that the rate has been stable and stagnant for the last past days. The reason is because no one is advocating and no one is inflicting the pain to the rate each and every day for it to go up. Now, as you all know, the people in the business sector, this had repercussions every day, because you would buy something today, but the rate tomorrow will be different, and thereby you had to pass it to the consumer, and this was causing unbearable pain and cost in the Zimbabwean society. But for now, that has been put to a halt. Now, this also came with a disadvantage to the generic people and to the business sector. Number one, for many people that were getting commission as a set of incentive for getting to transact, they no longer have that. And in this COVID-19 period, that was a much needed income for those people. Now, it is also for us to note that those that were doing legitimate transaction have now been all limited to only 5,000 RTGS per day. This limits the viability, sustainability of transacting in Zimbabwe, in which a country which basically was using a cashless system for a big time in this modern day. Reform, reform, reform. This has been the mantra of the new dispensation. Now we have seen that successfully coming to act and to be executed, as we have seen the repeal of the progressive and aggressive Aippa. It was just a mirror law that was used by the Smith regime of Law, Order and Maintenance Act. It is good that we can now openly criticize and give our input using the relevant information without being used by the law. And for the Ecocash, we clearly noted that it was important for the RBZ to come in and chip in and give their input to halt the escalating and the inflationary pull of rates every day in Zimbabwe. Now that we're giving us some of our views and opinions towards these two pieces of legislation in Zimbabwe, would like you to comment, share and subscribe our YouTube channel. I'm your host, Wilbert Muzaruwetu, and this was the broadcast.